And on the right, Fitchburg City Councilor at Large, Marcus DiNatale. Issue 1, following the recent school shootings, there have been moves in cities and states and in Congress to require government pension systems and other programs which invest funds to divest from gun manufacturers. There have also been calls, and there have been since the 1960s, to similarly divest in oil companies, tobacco companies, and other industries who some deem to be socially irresponsible. Question for the group: should elected officials direct their fund managers to invest taxpayer-funded portfolios with political positions as a factor, or should fund managers be left alone to invest these assets into funds with the singular goal of returning the highest yield possible for taxpayers? Michael?
I mean, leave them alone. We see it's enough of a struggle to keep pensions adequately funded. Okay, the municipalities feel it, the states feel it. It's enough of a struggle. The focus should solely be the rate of return on investment. Okay, and if it's environmentally conscious or companies that promote a good message, so be it. But if the funds managed, if it's necessary to bring in some of these other companies that people might find offensive, well, again, this is about making money, and this is about making the pension fund as healthy as possible.
Councilor DiNatale.
I agree with Michael. I think you should leave them alone. All of the local governments right now, most of them are in a major hole right now on unfunded liabilities with regard to pension. So you have to get what you can for the highest rate of return. I look at divesting out of a gun manufacturing holding as a direct message from the city to say to the gun manufacturer, we hold you responsible for things that have been going on in the media in the country lately, because that's what drives these issues. Some really big catastrophic event happens, an unfortunate event, and then it triggers these kinds of discussions, which then it makes me say, well, are we therefore as a municipality, if we vote to divest, are we holding the gun manufacturer responsible for the action of a crazed individual that this manufacturer didn't have any knowledge of, didn't know they were going to use their product to do this? And great majority of constituents too, who are gun owners and responsible gun owners, it's their money too being put into these funds. It's a really fine line to walk, and I would not even get involved in this. I would let it go.
Councilor Cormier.
I read a great quote, and I apologize that I won't give it proper credit, but it said that there's more money to be made in vice than in virtue. And I have to say, I agree with that. And you would think that I understand that the states and municipalities divesting from the tobacco industry, as an example, where it was costing us so much in medical costs for people that were dying from the tobacco industry. With the guns, I just think that there's money to be made there, that it's important that these things are funded. I don't think you can specifically say to the gun manufacturers, this is all your fault. I understand their reason for wanting to divest. I just don't think it's in the best interest.
Cindy.
I agree with everybody else. I think it's, first of all, it's taxpayer money, and so you have to do what's best for the overall taxpayer. They have to get the most amount of money. Like Marcus said, these pension funds are creating a huge headache for a lot of municipalities. They can't afford to be strapped by other issues. And where do you draw the line? I mean, if you go to guns, you're going to go to food companies that are creating obesity issues, or the pharmaceutical industry that's killing people with opiates. I mean, you could just go on and on. So, no, don't even open that can of worms.
Well, there have been a lot. There's been guns, there's been liquor, there's pornography, there's oil companies, environmental issues. A lot of it, social responsibility. It's really started as far back as you can go back to 1758 with the Quakers, when they were told not to invest their monies into certain industries that the Quakers felt were against their morals and their culture.
And if an individual person, if that is your beliefs, if that is your set of beliefs, or you have a moral objection to a certain company, I fully understand that. But when you have a fiduciary who is responsible for a large group of people in getting the best rate of return possible, I mean, it could arise depending on how much you do it, depending on the amount of times you divest from profitable companies, it could be seen as reckless, outright reckless to do that.
So what I hear from Michael is that, and Marcus, is just keep it completely separate. The sole purpose should be highest yield. I'm hearing from Councilor Cormier a little bit differently, because you're saying tobacco is one thing, but guns another. So there's that line drawn. So I would ask you, Michael, where did you stand back in the 80s when there was a move in Congress and the government not to invest in South African companies because of apartheid? Should we just be looking at dollars and cents and bottom line, or is there some point that we have some sort of social responsibility to represent and reflect our values and culture?
I imagine there's a line somewhere. I just wouldn't make it. I just wouldn't make it here. I don't even think I'd make it with tobacco companies, quite honestly. I think the tobacco company issue is going to take care of itself, because I don't know if you've looked at the balance sheets of some of these tobacco companies in the last 20 years. I think that issue's kind of taken care of itself. Okay. Yeah, I agree. There's a line to be drawn. I just wouldn't draw it the way we're describing here.
I mean, the topic is about gun manufacturers, so in this case I'm opposed, just like tobacco, just like oil. But sometimes I think about it as a case-by-case basis. From the federal level, you've got countries that are committing mass atrocities and, killing American soldiers. And in that instance, I believe 90+% of the public would say, yeah, we shouldn't do business with countries that cause harm to our own people and to innocents around the world. So there is a line to be drawn, and it should be a case-by-case basis. But for the societal matters like the tobacco, the oil, the gun manufacturers, we have to do what we can to bulk up these funds, because the less funds in those accounts, the more it drains our operating budgets every year, which takes away core services from the taxpayer. So there's definitely a line to be drawn when it gets to the federal level, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it, and I ran some of the numbers, and I looked some of the numbers, and I think the position that I would take is the fact that I think in Massachusetts the retirement boards, the budget is like $71 billion. Of that, $5 million is invested with 6 companies that are gun related. So I think the solution for us, and if there is a strong push on this, and I agree that there will be, is not to necessarily divest that. Leave it where it is. We're getting returns on that. Just don't make further investments in it. I think you get your social people socially that are completely against the gun lobby. I think they get satisfied a little bit to say, okay, we're not going to put any more money there. And the people that want our money to get a better return on it, it's been safe there, it's getting a good return on it, leave it where it is. Just don't add any more to it.
I actually don't agree with that. I think you go wherever the money is. And we're talking about national American companies, especially when you're talking about international. That's a little bit different, but we're talking about companies right here in the United States. Whether you're for or against it, they have a purpose. Tobacco industry is a little bit different, but I would still apply the same thing. Where do you draw the line? At what point somebody may say I'm against guns, somebody else may say I'm against the pharmaceutical industry. That could continue on. So no, I think they need to do what's best for the funds, and people need to take a step back from their personal issues and understand that this is pensions you're talking about. These pensions have to be funded, and they have to do what's in the best interest of the pension.
So no lines when it comes to social responsibility, reflective values.
Not when it comes to that, no.
Just money.
Just money, yeah, as far as I'm concerned.
Very good. Issue 2. This November, Massachusetts will go to the polls and vote on a constitutional amendment which would enact an additional 4% income tax on people who make over $1 million a year. This money will be earmarked for transportation and education in the Commonwealth. Do you support or oppose this proposal, Councilor DiNatale?
I'm opposed, and right now I know it's going before the state Supreme Court to see if it can even go on the ballot. If it does go on the ballot, I will not support it, for the sole reason that, being in government for 12 years, government's very good at always trying to take. There's never any inward look as to where can we make reductions, where can we make some noticeable reforms. Unfortunately, in this case, there's 19,600 residents in Massachusetts that make over $1 million. The money that they're looking to take in from this is around $1.9 billion annually. And my concern is the real possibility of an exodus of even a fraction of these 19,000 people to leave the state for a more tax-friendly common state in the country. And, so it has an adverse effect. The other issue is there is some talk in the legal sense of, can this even be earmarked for transportation education? Or does the state government have the authority, the discretion to spend it on whatever they want? That hasn't been determined yet. But given the way the state runs, I'm not convinced that if they get this extra money, they're going to put it to good use that the residents can see a noticeable effect from. And where does it end there? The budget keeps going up by 4 or 5% a year. I mean, in a couple of years, we'll have them come back and say, we need another tax, or we need more money. So I'm opposed to it 100%.
Councilor Cormier.
I would love to say I am for it 100%. I can't, and I understand. The issues that you have with it. I also would take into account the people that are one-time millionaires. These are people that don't have a steady income of $1 million, but because of retirement, because they sell a family business, all of a sudden they get thrown into that tax bracket. So those are the people that I would be leery of. But otherwise, listen, there is a great need there. I don't buy the statistics that if you add this tax, there'll be a mass exodus. So for that reason, I do support it. I think the middle class has been taxed to the extent that they're just hanging on. We're just hanging on by our fingertips to stay in the middle class. I think that there is this untapped resource that we need to tap into it. And with this increase, it's not going to put us at the very top. It's going to put us at about I think the 4th or 5th highest in the country. And I think Massachusetts, I think we can support that.
Cindy.
I oppose it. I think that at this particular point, I mean, if you're making over $500,000 a year right now, you're already paying 42% in payroll taxes. So to add another 4% state tax, you're getting almost to 50% tax rate. I just think that will discourage people. For me, and I may be alone in this, but I mean, the goal in life is to make money. We want to make money. I mean, I'd love to be a millionaire. That's my goal. I'm working towards it. Will I ever see it? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't want to discourage people from doing that. I would be discouraged knowing that if I get over a certain level, 50% of my taxes, 50% of my incomes go into taxes. I don't agree. They're already paying enough.
Michael.
Well, Marcus, it was fun while it lasted.
The first one we were on the phone.
Yeah, I'm a big progressive income tax proponent. It works. It's just shown in recent history to work. I look at Minnesota, which raised taxes on the rich, versus Kansas, which cut taxes on everybody and went down the tubes. And Minnesota's doing pretty well, relatively speaking. I believe in a progressive tax rate, and also as an attorney. My experience with the estate tax, and they, beginning in 2001, the federal estate tax, they kept cutting it and cutting it and cutting it and cutting it and raising the exemption, and it hasn't shown to really do a darn thing to stimulate the economy in terms of making this sort of eliminating the estate tax, eliminating that penalty, making the taxes flatter overall. To me, it's just, I am similar to what Pauline indicated. The statistics just aren't there. I mean, in my profession, in dealing with, state officials or dealing with a lot of different things, hey, it would be a lot less stressful in my life to move up to New Hampshire, and I could not pay sales tax, and I could pick out all the shiny firearms that I wanted that are not on a banned list and all that. It'd be great. Why don't I move to New Hampshire? Because there are so many other considerations for why you live in a certain place. Yeah, are a couple of millionaires going to move? Yeah, maybe. Okay.
You wouldn't leave me.
What?
You wouldn't leave me.
That's one of the reasons I stay here. Exactly.
Well, so the federal government has a progressive income tax, where you have all the different tax rates, all the different tax brackets, and you look at the federal income tax code, and it's a monster, and no one can make sense of it. And then you look at Massachusetts, it's always had this flat tax, and it's a couple pages, you can do it in 5 minutes. So if you think that works, I'd hate to see what you think doesn't work. Marcus, are you concerned that by this is, there's an old saying, if a camel gets his nose in the tent, it's in the tent. Is this an opening to bring Massachusetts from a flat tax to a progressive tax state.
Absolutely. And you know, to counter Michael's point, you know, we have a flat tax in Massachusetts. The voters in Massachusetts repeatedly have voted to have it go back down to 5%. They recently rejected the gas tax increase. So I don't believe there's a stomach, even in the state of Massachusetts, by the voter standard, to have taxes raised on everybody. So what they're doing now is they're cherry picking people at the top. And, you know, this whole item of fairness, you know, well, it's fair. Well, fair to who? I mean, for the progressive income tax folks, those who pay the most taxes at the federal and state levels are the least number of people in the state. I believe these 19,600 people, when I read in the Boston Globe, pay over 36% of the state income taxes. I mean, that's astronomical. Over a third of the state income taxes are paid by these wealthy individuals. To me, that's not very fair as opposed to a flat tax. Now, Massachusetts just passed a budget in the state Senate. It's over $40 billion. It's going up by billions a year, even with a flat tax. So I don't buy the argument that cutting taxes or making a flat tax imposed will have a detrimental effect on state services. I look at how's the money being spent. What are you going to do with this $1.9 billion that you raised? And where's the guarantee, as you pointed out, that in 5 or 10 years you're not going to come back to the well and this time go even below those making $1 million? Next time it's 500,000. Next time it's 300,000. What's the definition of wealthy, everybody? I never can get a really good definition of what's wealthy. Someone could think I'm wealthy.
Now playing devil's advocate on that, let's look at just the real-world implications if this passes. $1 million a year. That means it's going to affect people that make $20,000 a week and more. They're making $20,000 a week. Now, that first $20,000 a week is taxed at the current rate. It's only anything above that that is the additional 4%.
Right. It's a surtax.
And they're talking about that raising $2 billion, which, if appropriated to the right causes, could be very impactful when you look at the conditions of the roads around here, when you look at the schools. For someone making $20,000 a week to pay an extra 4% after that first $20,000, is that really too much to ask?
I don't think it is. I think when you get up into that threshold, then asking for that little extra and paying that little extra is not too much to ask. I agree that I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the SJC has to say, and whether or not that this can even be on the ballot. You know, can they? You know, they're not allowed to have anything on the ballot that is a specific appropriation. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't agree that it should be there and to be spent willy-nilly, whatever we want, but is there a serious need in education and transportation, our roadways? Absolutely, I agree. And under those circumstances, I would wholeheartedly support it.
Are you concerned at all that this is the way of the camel getting its nose in the tent towards a progressive income tax in the state? Do we set this precedent?
I think it's time.
And really, the opposite has happened. I mean, in the 50s, we had a 90% top income tax rate, okay? Until 1980, we had a 70% top income tax rate. And again, progressive taxes, you bring up a good point. First of all, you know, the whole simplicity of the form thing has never been it's never been persuasive on me. Okay, you have to fill out a tax form. You have to fill out a tax form, whether it's 1 page or 6. Okay, but again, the progressive tax rate is only that amount above the certain amount. And when we had that 90% top rate for that top amount, had that 70% rate for that top amount. Okay, we built the interstate. We built the interstate system. We ran deficits that, even taking inflation into account, ran much smaller than they do nowadays. So you can't say that progressive taxation system didn't work federally. Well, we went the opposite way. Never mind the camel nose in the tent. The camel got his nose out of the tent. We went for less and less and less, and the federal taxes are becoming more and more regressive, more flatter each time that one of these tax cut rounds has passed. Well, how's that working out for us?
It's a documented fact that in the 80s, when they made that significant tax cut, more money than ever before flowed into the federal treasury. How it got spent, how it got appropriated is a different story, which is where my focus is always. How's the money being utilized, not how much are we going to raise? It's a documented fact, when you lower taxes across the board, more money flows into the treasury. And
so the Laffer curve is real.
I'm going based on federal IRS statistics. that I read last night. I'm just going based
The
on
other
federal
issue
IRS
that
statistics.
none
How it
of
gets
us have
spent is a
talked
different
about
story.
is
I mean,
when you look at, you're looking at the 42% of the payroll taxes. That's not counting what these people are paying in property taxes. If you're a millionaire, you're probably paying pretty high in property taxes. You're paying sales tax on all the little luxury items that you're buying. You know, you're paying luxury tax on certain things. So these people are paying taxes. They're not sliding. They're not getting out of the system. They're paying more than their fair share of taxes.
And
So
the town of Weston has some very nice school buildings as a result of it, and I don't get to enjoy them at all, darn it.
but I think you're cherry picking. You're cherry picking
yeah,
people.
absolutely, yeah.
You're cherry picking. I as
Let's
a
go after the
legislator,
people that
I'm going
make
to take
money,
a dart,
you know?
throw it at the dartboard, and go, oh, over $1 million. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it's right of me as a legislator to say I'm only going to cherry pick and discriminate against certain people who make certain amounts.
the more money you make, the
I
more
mean,
we're taking from you.
Right. I mean, that philosophy doesn't jive with me.
And is the percentage itself too much? It's almost doubles, right? It almost doubles their income
Yeah.
tax once you get over the $1 million mark. You're okay with that? Do you really think there won't be any flight outside of Massachusetts, especially for those that live close to the border?
Sure there will be. But I mean, we're going to have a net gain. Yeah, I'm confident of that.
That's not my biggest
and
concern.
maybe you don't double it. Maybe you do reach a compromise.
But again, you do it for those making over $1 million because there's only 19,000 of them in this state. So it's very easy to impose a tax increase on a small segment of people because the majority of voters, it's not going to impact them.
Yeah.
So
It's easy to say-
that's why, as you said, it's kind of a backdoor way to get to that progressive point where eventually we're all going to get hit.
And it's
They're gonna
easy
get
for
tax
voters to
brackets.
vote on something that doesn't impact them.
Right.
Until it does,
Yeah, exactly,
legislatively down the road.
exactly, you know.
Issue 3, the Trump administration announced that the United States will be pulling out of the Iran nuclear arms agreement. Is this the right call, Councilor Cormier?
It is not the right call, not surprised. He's been promising to do this all along. He's done it. I think history will tell. We're going to see how not just the country itself is going to handle it. I think it's a slap in the face to the other countries who are with us, our supporters. Bad call.
Cindy?
I think it's the right call. I think we should have never gotten into it to begin with. Putting a temporary 15-year period on that, and then what happens in 15 years, it was a bad move to begin with. The other European countries that are not on board with this, that's because of the economic impact that it's going to have on them with their trade agreements. It's not because of they're worried about us.
Michael?
There's plenty of things I don't know about. And when I don't know about something, I rely on experts in the field to tell me about it and to make recommendations, okay? And this president has shown a pattern over the 2 years he's been in here of not surrounding himself with the best and the brightest like he promised, okay? He surrounds himself with yes men and hawkish neocons like Paul Bolton. I don't rely on people like that. I don't rely on yes men to tell me what to do. I don't rely on, I didn't like the previous president, so I'm going to reverse everything he did type of rationales, okay? If you're going to tell me that objective, non-politicians, objective experts in foreign policy and foreign communications and dealing with other countries, which I'm sure you can find plenty of non-political ones, or at least minimally political ones. If you're telling me that a majority of those people, or a substantial number of those people would support this, then I'd be on board. I haven't seen that yet.
Marcus?
I'm totally in favor of the backing out of the agreement. And I try to look at this, though, not in the lens or the prism of Democrat versus Republican, but common sense. I look at the fact that this is a regime, an oppressive regime, that is documented to kill American soldiers, fund terrorist organizations that are hostile towards us, kill their own people, and they're a pariah in that region. In Syria, with Israel, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Kuwaitis, they were all against this agreement, as obviously Israel. I look at what was in the deal, and I look at the fact that the Senate Minority Leader currently, Chuck Schumer, not only did he vote against this agreement, as did some other Democrats on the Senate as well, he made a statement when he voted against it stating what was wrong with the deal. And I look at the fact that Chuck Schumer was against this deal. And I looked at the deal in the text, and the areas that are of concern is there's a sunset clause. So after 10 years, the Iranians are free to pursue whatever they wish to pursue after those 10 years are up. this comment that Trump makes about, well, we gave them $150 billion. We didn't give them $150 billion. We took assets that were previously frozen and we unfroze them, allowing them to now do business with certain areas. It was their assets that they now are free to use for whatever they want. There's no restrictions. So there's people who have obvious concerns that they're funding terrorist organizations and still conducting their program. And the Israelis provided incontrovertible evidence that they are still working on a program, even though they're not supposed to. And the last thing I'll say is the inspection part of that agreement specifically stated that the American government or the UN inspectors cannot go on Revolutionary Guard military sites to inspect any activity, and that's where the majority of their fissile material is made. So I didn't see this as an agreement, and plus I thought it should have been a treaty. I didn't think it should have been just a majority vote of the Senate. I think it should have got 2/3 of the Senate to pass as a treaty. But so I subscribe to the Reagan model of trust but verify. This agreement had way too many trusts and not enough verifies in it.
I agree.
Well, you know, President Kennedy said that we should never negotiate out of fear, but we should never fear to negotiate. It's easy to negotiate with our friends. It's tougher to negotiate with people that we don't see eye to eye with. And yeah, they are a regime that that doesn't share the same cultures and same values as we do. But Trump's own State Department has said that Iran has complied with the UN inspections to ensure that they're not enriching uranium. Okay, it is working, and now that we're pulling out of that, which means no more inspections. They're going to be free to go back to developing their nuclear arms. And in addition, because of the imposed restrictions again, their oil production is going to be cut by 1 million barrels a day. And what's that going to do to the rest of the economy? I mean, contrary to what marketing campaigns, America doesn't run on Dunkin' Donuts. It runs on petroleum. So how does that affect us? We're going to stop inspections. They're going to be able to do what they want, and our gas prices are going to go up. Who's getting rich? The Saudis. The Saudis are getting rich.
I reject the premise it's not working. I reject the premise it's working.
His own State Department says they're complying with the inspections.
But again, you can have inspections that are incompliant, but where are they inspecting? Again,
Exactly.
look at the agreement.
Exactly.
They're not allowed to inspect certain sites in that country that are known to have that activity
And
going
they're not
on.
allowed to do quick checks. You have to let them know in advance that you're coming to
But
do
now
the
we'll do
inspection.
no checks.
Correct. Well, temporarily, but the sanctions will hurt them enough that they're going to have to come back to the table and want to do
What
another
non-political
agreement.
experts are saying that pulling out at this particular time was a good idea? I mean, again, like you said, his own State Department, which I'm sure is which actually his State Department, I mean, the way government works, it's full of non-political policy wonks that are recommending that, or they're saying that it's working. Okay, again, where are the experts? I'm not going to rely on Chuck Schumer. I'm not going to rely on Mitch McConnell. I'm not going to rely on Donald Trump. I mean, I want to see non-political experts that are saying this agreement was a bad idea and it's not working. I just haven't seen it.
The policy is a starting point. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, but it was working. And that's why pulling out of it, and I think it's a slap in the face to our allies who worked with us with this and got these people. And as you said, the inspections are working. It was a starting point. Is it perfect? No, but we have to start somewhere. We have to keep some control somewhere. And I think we've just let it pulled out completely, and I think history is going to tell.
So Shane, we should have worked on it, tweaked it, modify it rather than pulling out?
Absolutely.
You know what else was working? The sanctions before we did the agreement.
Yeah,
it was crippling
exactly.
that regime. There was an Arab Spring, and then we backed away. And
$4 gasoline. That's always wonderful. But the most important question.
But so we should help fund the terrorists because we're getting cheap gas, right?
And we're not
So
doing that with Saudi Arabia? We're not doing that with Saudi Arabia if they're our allies, so that's okay.
So we're going to pick and choose
But
which
that's
social
okay.
issues are really important.
Whoever gives the most campaign funds. Right?
Remember all
Okay,
those,
Trump over there rubbing the globe, okay, with the Saudis, and now all of a sudden they're going to...
Remember all those Iranian
The Saudis, the ones that donated $25 million to the foundation. Okay.
Laurel or
So
Yanny?
they just bought their way into that
Laurel or
one.
Yanny?
I only hear Yanny.
Yanny, that's all I hear.
Laurel.
Yanny.
The correct answer is Laurel. Thank you for joining us. Cut off.